Hey everybody, it's Rob. I'm back. We're going to do another Hack the Box walkthrough. This time we're doing a retired machine called Buff. It is a Windows machine rated as easy, and I thought it was fairly easy. There's a lot that is going on here, so if you see me struggling to recreate some of this, that's because there's a lot of manipulation of some old code that you have to do, and just a lot of things that you have to line up correctly to actually exploit this box. Honestly, it gave me a little bit of confidence because I was able to get all of this stuff working. Some of these are older Python exploits that you have to do a lot of cleanup on. So anyway, without further ado, you can see I'm connected to HackTheBox's VPN, and I have Buff spun up, and here's the IP address. First thing we did was to run an nmap scan, and what I did was I just ran a service version detection T4. All ports aggressive. It was just taking way too long. I don't know what's going on, but Hack the Box for me has just been kind of slow. It's probably the time of day. Everybody and their brother's probably on doing machines. So I didn't want to sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait. So I just did a normal scan. There's not much that comes up at all. All that's there is port 8080 HTTP, which is an Apache web server. So if we go to that site, it is Mr. Ben's Bro Hut. What a great name, right? You click around in here, there's not a whole lot going on. But if you get to the contact portion, that's where some good information is. It actually tells you it's made using Gym Management Software 1.0. So the first thing that I did before I did anything else was I searched for an exploit. And you can do this in either searchsploit. I just used Google in this case, and this one came up, Gym Management System 1.0, unauthenticated, which is important because we don't have credentials, and remote code execution. We love those, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. This exploit is a bit of a pain in the butt, okay? Hopefully it works the first time after I make some changes to it. The other thing that I was going to save you a ton of heartache is you have to use Python version 2. So the command's going to be Python 2 when you run it. So let's download the code. You can see I had already downloaded it previously, but what I'm going to do is take this code and move it into my Kali folder. And then I'm going to come in my Kali folder, and I'm going to create a new folder called 48506, which is the exploit DB number of the exploit. So I can put this thing in its own folder. Drag it over there. We're going to hop into that folder, and then we're going to right-click and select Open Terminal here. We're going to do an ls. First thing we're going to do is chmod plus x, and we're going to make that file executable. I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to try running it, and we're going to get some errors. So why don't we just get that over with? Python. Well, maybe not. Let's try it with Python 2. And then we'll just try and run it. The only argument that it takes is the website. And actually, before I do this, let's take a look at the code, and I'll kind of explain a little bit of what's going on here. So what this does is it takes advantage of a vulnerability which allows you to abuse the upload directory, which is normally only allows images to be uploaded. So JPEGs, JPEG with an E, GIF, PNG, capital JPEG, right? So this uses what's called magic bytes, and basically it fools the server into thinking it's an image you're uploading when actually it's a malicious file. And you can see what it's doing down here. Now, this is where I don't know if we run this with Python 2, we might get still some errors, but I don't think so. We'll see. But overall, it's a very simple exploit in that you just run it against the IP address of the machine that you're going to exploit, and you'll see it's good, but it's also very limited in scope of what it can do. So it only gets us so far before we have to come up with Plan B, and I'll explain why. So let's actually try and run it with Python 2. And basically, if you look at this, it's Python 2 with the script, and then we have to change the IP address because the IP address of this machine has changed for me. So it's 129.124.155, I believe. Let's just make sure. Yep. All right. And then you want to make sure you put that last trailing backslash in. Otherwise, it's not going to format the exploit payload right, and you won't get the shell. So we're going to hit enter. And we got the shell. Now, you're going to see when we try to do something here, I'm going to do a dir. You see this right here? This is the magic byte where it's kind of telling the server that it's an image. Here's the code that it used to exploit and get us the shell. Now, the big problem with this is you can't go back. You can't change directories. So if I want to change directories to the C drive, you can't do any of that. Okay, it's not going to work, as you can see. But what we can do is we could get the user flag. So there's obviously, if we do who am I, we're buff Sean. So it dropped us into a user account. So obviously with Hack the Box, there's two flags. So the cheating way to do this is we can just do type and I think we can just do it like this. Users and Sean and desktop user.txt, and let's see what happens. Yeah, there it is. So you can get the flag doing that. Now we're going to have to figure out a better way to get a shell, and really there's a few things that you want to do here. I chose to try and upload netcat and then execute netcat. So let's try and do that. Okay. Let's go here to our Kali attack machine, and then the CD, I believe it's users share. I think there's Windows binaries. Yeah. And we do an ls. We have nc.exe in here. So what I think I'm going to do, and I'm going to save you guys a lot of heartache when we get to the next part, I'm going to set up an HTTP server here. So we'll do that with Python. So we'll go Python 3 module HTTP, and we're going to stick with 8,000. Oops. We're going to hit enter. And if you can see right here, we have the Windows binary for netcat. So we want to try and get that onto the machine. Okay. So let's see if we can do that. Go back here. And I believe I tried to use certutil. That did not work. So I ended up using PowerShell. And there's a few ways that you can do file transfers with PowerShell. The way that I'm going to do it is like this. Let's do PowerShell. And I apologize if some of these commands don't work. I had to do a lot of experimenting to get this stuff to work. So IWR, HTTP, and then our IP address, which is 10.10.14.178, port 8000, and it's netcat.exe, and we want the out file to be netcat.exe. And hopefully it drops that file in here. All right, and let's see if it's there. Yes, it is. Okay, so it actually worked. So now what we're going to do is we need to create a listener, and then we need to run netcat. Let's do that now. First, let's kill this web server. Control C. And let's start a listener. But let's go back to our normal home directory. And then we can start a listener doing netcat. And let's do it on 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're listening on 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on this machine, we're going to run netcat.exe, the IP address of our attack machine, 14.178. on port 1234, and then we're going to offer up cmd.exe, and let's see what happens. All right, let's go back and see if we have a shell. Yes, we do. So now we have a legitimate shell, right, where we don't have to worry about not being able to change directories. Okay, so here's the part that took me the longest, okay? I ran WinPs, I did a whole bunch of stuff. I couldn't find anything. There was nothing. So what I ended up doing is I went to C users, and then if we do a dir, there we go. I was going to say what happened to all the users. Then we go cd Sean into our folders, and dir, sorry. I started going down through all of these directories, and in the downloads folder, believe it or not, dir, there's this cloud me, and it looks like a version 1112. So what I ended up doing was assuming that that was running on this machine, and then came over here, and there's actually a buffer overflow for this. Now here's where it can get a little complicated again, because this is a POC, meaning it's a proof of concept. So all this bad boy is going to do is open calculator on the machine, which is not going to help us very much. So what we want to do is we need to download this code. Go to our downloads folder. Okay, downloads. And then we're going to drag this over to our Kali home directory. And then we're going to create another folder. And this one we're going to call 48389 after the exploit. And we're going to drop that exploit in there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to open a terminal here. Do an ls. You can see it's not executable. So we're going to do chmod plus x. How about we do plus? There we go. X. And it's 48389.py. Now, if we do an ls, should be good. So what we want to do is we want to look at the code. So we're going to do nano. And it's actually 389.py. And here is the shell code that we need to replace, because this shell code, like I said, only opens up calc, which we are not interested in. The other thing that we want to do is here's the msfvenom payload basically they generated. We're going to want to use another flag on here, TAC-V, which will add whatever we want in front of it. So you can see it says payload in front of everything. So we're going to want that because we don't want to have to come in here and paste this in and then manually add payload in front of everything. And I'll show you how to do that. But really what we need to change in here is all we need to change from what I remember is this payload information here. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up another terminal, and I have a msfvenom statement that I worked to put together. And I will explain every bit of it to you, so don't worry. In a shameless plug, I will tell you I have another video on this, on how to generate shellcode with msfvenom. So if you haven't seen that video, you can go back and look at that. All right. So msfvenom, the architecture x86, the payload, we're going to do a Windows shell reverse TCP. Okay. The L host is always your attack machine. The L port is the ports that you want to have it connect back to, which means we're going to need to start a listener on 6666 when we run this code. TAC-B is for the bad characters. Bad characters are like carriage return, line feed. You don't want those in your shell code. So if the author is kind enough of the exploit to give you the bad characters, you want to pay attention to that and make sure they're in there. And as you saw, the code did include the bad characters. So I just copied those bad characters. The format is Python because the script that we're running is Python. And then here's that variable argument, tac v. And this, we basically wanted to add payload in front of all of the lines of the shellcode, okay? So that it essentially matches this. So what it's going to do is it's going to put payload in front of all of those. Now, if it was something else, you could put that there, that word there, okay? But because it's payload, I put payload there. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to generate all of the shellcode, and what we want is everything with payload in front of it. So we want all of this, okay? We want to copy this, copy selection, and then we want to go back here, and we want to replace all of this. So I'm actually going to clean up this garbage right here too. I don't like, oops. And then I'm gonna, actually, you know what we're gonna do? Control X, we're gonna get out of here, no. And we're going to open it in gedit. I think that'll be the easiest way to do the copy and paste. So basically, yeah, you basically want to do this. You want to highlight all of this, paste. Now you see our code, there's much more code here, but this is actually not going to just run calc. It's actually going to connect back to us via a reverse shell. Okay, so we want to save this code. So all we did was replace all their payload statements with our payload statements that we generated from msfvenom. I'm going to click save, and we're going to exit. Okay. And basically, I guess, oh, there's one thing I should probably tell you here. If you look, this has to run on the local host. Now, I can pretty much guarantee you there's no Python on that machine, the one that we exploited. So if we come back over here, where's our, yeah, here, there's Python is not on this machine. So what we need to do is we're going to use Chisel. And in another shameless plug for one of my previous videos, I have an entire video on how to use Chisel. So Chisel basically allows you to do port forwarding so that a port appears to be a local port when it's actually on a remote machine. Okay, so it allows you to do port forwarding. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to run Chisel on the exploited box and on our attack box. And then we're going to run that exploit on our machine, okay? So let's just go back and look at this, and we need to make sure that we set the Chisel server to listen for connections on 8888, okay? Because that means all the traffic from the machine that we're exploiting is forwarded to port 888. And when this exploit runs, it'll run on our local machine against port 888 and effectively be running the exploit on the machine that we're exploiting. I know that's very complicated, very confusing, but trust me, if you just follow these instructions, this will work. And I highly encourage you to go back and look at my previous video on how to use Chisel, because you will need it at some point, okay? So we're going to get out of here now that we have our code in here and everything looks like it's good to go, okay? And then what we're going to do is I want to make sure, I got a bunch of these windows open, so I need to start closing some of these. I'm going to close this one because we don't need it anymore. I'm going to leave that one open, and I'll leave this one open too. So what we're going to do is we're going to open a new terminal window. We're going to go to CD Tools, because that's where I have everything. So it's CD Tools, and then we're going to do an LS, and then I think I have a folder. Yep, CD Chisel, and then we're going to do an LS, and we need the Win64 version, and we're going to pipe that over to the exploited machine. We're going to you can use at this point. You could probably use certutil now that we have a legitimate shell. Okay. We could also just use that PowerShell command again, which I probably will do because I think I already have it written out. So we'll go CD Win64, WinX64, and we'll do an ls. And there's our chisel client. So we're going to do Python 3 HTTP, and we're going to do it on port 8000. You know what? Let's do it on 9000 because I think we're going to use port 8000 with chisel. So let's go 9000. We'll do it on 9000. All right. So now we're going to come back over, and we want to get chisel on this machine. So we could probably do it right here in the downloads. So let's do cert. Well, let's do the PowerShell command again. I think I even have it written out here. Yep, PowerShell. Cert util would work as well. So PowerShell command IWR HTTP our attack IP address on port 9000. We want chisel.exe, and then we want the file that we're saving. We want to save it as chisel.exe. So we're going to hit enter. And it's a little slow, but just bear with it. And I'm going to pause while we wait. Okay, that was pretty slow. It took a little while, so I'm glad I paused it. So let's do a dir, and let's make sure. Okay, chisel is there. So now what we want to do is we want to go back to our attack machine, and we want to kill this HTTP server, and we want to go back a directory, do an ls, and now we want Linux. Do an ls. Okay, and we have chisel here. So we want to run the chisel server, okay? And like I said, I have a whole video on this, okay? Oops, I'm just killing it today, guys, sorry. So we're running chisel. Why does it have? We don't need all that. We just need chisel. Okay, so chisel, server, port 8000, reverse. Okay, so that's what we have set up here. Let's hit enter, and it's running. Okay, so it's listening on 8000. Okay, so now that we have the server set up, we want to go back to our client, and we want to run chisel on here. And I'm just going to copy and paste, and I'll explain all of it. Copy, paste. So we're running the chisel. We want to run it as a client. We want to connect back to our attack machine on 8000, and we want to forward to the remote port on my machine on 8888 all of the traffic on localhost, which is this machine, on 8888. So essentially all of the traffic on 888 is going to go to 888 on my machine. Okay, so let's hit enter, and it's running. Okay, now because we have a connection between these two machines, and my machine is getting all the traffic from port 888 on the exploited machine forwarded to it, we should be able to run the exploit on the local machine. Okay, so let's just head back. I think it's this one now. Let's do a nano and just make sure. Yep, this is the one, and let's just make sure. Yep, our new code is in here. It's much longer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here's where we cross our fingers, okay? So ls, it's executable, it's ready to go. We're going to do, and this we're going to want to run with Python, because again, this is an older exploit. So sudo Python, and we want to run 48 389.py. And we want to start a listener. If you remember, we had the Venom MSF Venom payload connect to 6666. So that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to start a listener on 6666. It's listening. Let's go back here again and let's hit enter and cross our fingers. And let's see what happened. Yes, we have a shell, okay? And if we do who am I, we're buff administrator. So now we can go cd c users administrator desktop, do a dir. We have the root flag there, so now we can do type root.txt, and there's the root flag. So this was really kind of complicated in the sense that first we had to exploit the gym management system, which was a pain in the butt, okay? And that we had to explicitly run this exploit with Python 2 as the command. Otherwise, it will not work. I've tried Python. I tried Python 3. Forget it. It just will not work unless you run it with Python 2. Once we got on there, then it took me forever to figure out how to privesc because I couldn't find anything. I ran WinPs. There was nothing. Couldn't find anything else. I ended up finding this CloudMe 1112 executable in Sean's downloads. Assumed that it was running on the box. Found that this CloudMe had a buffer overflow, which is only a POC, which means we had to do another msfvenom statement to generate new shell code to actually do a reverse shell. Then we had to set up chisel because this had to run on the local machine on which there was no Python, okay? So we set up chisel to forward all the port 888 traffic from the exploited Windows machine to our local machine. So that essentially when we ran the exploit on our local machine, when it ran the exploit on port 8888, it was actually running it on the Windows machine. I hope that makes sense. Chisel is a wonderful tool along with Logolo NG. If you have not watched those videos, I highly encourage you to watch them. They're really, I learned a lot making them and they're really helpful. Those tools will pop up again and again. Okay, so this was a little complicated. I will make sure all of the links are in the description below for all of the exploits. If anybody has any questions, any comments, or you see me doing dumb stuff and you want to alert me to that, I'll be happy to take the criticism. All right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks, and I'll see you next time. Take care.